day and welcome to the latest episode of the Tradepass podcast, where we have guests from all across the world. We do some fabulous events here at Tradepass, and each of them is a stellar property. Where we're going to be at WFIS Kenya, hashtag WFIS Kenya, and this is going to bring in 354 fintech companies across numerous sectors. It's going to be fantastic. 2023 is just a fabulous year already. And I'm really excited about what's coming up on the 24th and 25th of May at the Kenyatta International Convention Center at Nairobi, powering East Africa's financial hub with the next wave of technologies, the World Financial Innovation Series. Very special guest on the show today, Mr. Charles Kinyanjui. Right name, right way to pronounce it. Hello, hi.
Yeah, sure, Jay. Right way to pronounce it. I'm so happy to be here. I'm super excited. Wonderful morning, wonderful weather in Kenya in this month of April. I'm looking forward to this date. So maybe to my audience, hi, I'm Charles Kinyanjui. I'm the head of new ventures and fintech development at National Bank of Kenya, a subsidiary of Kenya Commercial Bank, that is KCB. And I'm thrilled to be a speaker at the World Financial Innovation Series 2023 in Kenya. And I'm very sure and waiting and ready for you there at KICC, that is the Kenya International Convention Center, on the 24th and 25th of May. See you all there. Most welcome.
Well, I'm very excited. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to be there in May, 24th and 25th of May. But at this point, you told me you were born in Kenya and you've been in Kenya for so many years. What makes Kenya amazing? I mean, it is the Silicon Savannah of Africa, but what do you love most about Kenya?
I'd put it this way, that beyond everything is just this culture. Forget the tech and all. Very friendly, welcoming. It's a beautiful country, I can tell you that. I'm not sure if you visited even Nairobi, because we have a national park right in the middle of our capital city, which is something that is worthwhile, breathtaking. You can actually look at it. We enjoy peace and tranquility. Further off, Kenyans are steadfast into adopting new things. You can tell with technology, you can tell with what you're doing, political circles, economy. Things have been a bit rough in the recent past. But we are grappling into those effects. But I'd say it's a beautiful country to be in. It's a place to stay. I'm sure when you come here, you wouldn't want to go back.
Well, I love it. I love the heart of Kenya. And I've been speaking to so many of you who are going to be there at the World Financial Innovation Series. And at the heart of your country is a lot of warmth and love. And that makes us super excited to be there as well. But tell us, you are the head of new ventures and fintech development at the National Bank of Kenya. Tell us a little bit about your job. Like in one line, if you had to describe how exciting your job is, what would that be?
I'd put it in terms of the excitement it creates in creating new things. And of course, in the middle of it, it boils down to partnerships. So not going the tech way so much, because I know our audience is quite diverse on matters digitization. So you're looking at two things. Trend-wise, where is banking headed to in terms of innovations, in terms of how we treat data, how we interact with our customers, their kind of lifestyle, and all this kind of ecosystem. So that is my direct avenue. And that is one bit that is equally challenging and very exciting. The other bit is that you have to stick on or latch on to the bit of one, look at these societies you're dealing with. Look at the communities, look at the organization that you're talking to. Ideally, you cannot provision or you cannot provide for everything that they need at a go or by yourself. So you need other people to jump in or plug in one way or another. And this is where we form this cluster. We call it an innovation framework built on partnerships. And what they bring on board is actually that avenue or the canvas that circumvents in terms of how does banking marry into fintech, marry into business to government or business to business, and what efforts can we build in terms of synergies to be able to co-create. So that is the avenue that I work on, or that my team works on. So I sit within a strategic position, nailed at business as well as ICT. Banking in a bigger way, I'd call it, apart from being a store of value, is a digital center force in terms of, moving transactions, facilitating, kind of loans, and also in a bigger way, creating wealth. So if you look at all this, you need an ecosystem that actually encompasses other people to bring in their strengths so that in that partnership, we can be able to achieve our common objective or synergies.
That's fantastic. I mean, so many different partnerships that you bring together. But at the NBK Bank, you used one word that spurs on the next question:
Yeah,
innovation. Every
yeah.
bank today is looking at innovating, digital integrations, cross-functional
Yeah.
solutions, technology-based digital transformation processes. One top innovation at NBK that you've implemented in 2023 that you're so proud of because you batted it out of the park with this one.
Mhm. I'd talk about quite several, but the one that was very impactful was actually looking at, maybe I can talk about two, not just one. Innovation around, business to government, I'd say automation, around helping the society or helping the person on the street to be able to use the expansive network of the bank to actually make payments. So meaning if you're doing your utility payments, you're doing your statutory payments. Utility here, I mean electricity, I mean water. Statutory payments, I mean your kind of social security payments, or regulatory. This is, things to do with entities like, let's say, taxation. One, we needed to use the capabilities of the brick and mortar because it's not going away today or tomorrow. And we also needed to look at how do we strengthen the bit of interaction between ourselves and these institutions. The way it was, the kind of, I'd say, handshake or the kind of, touch point, the friction levels were quite stretched, meaning there was too much friction. I mean, ideally, you needed to visit a bank, a branch, or go to, an agent to do these kind of transactions. But other ways of synergizing it was how do we allow even our own channels to push in or pump in into this kind of payments? So it's a big kind of syndication that we've done. Also, as a bank, we've been able to get into the social aspect. You remember, we're still facing the SDGs, and part of it has always been addressed by the WASH, the water, sanitation, and health kind of, services. And here we're talking about how do you build sustainability? How do you look at water as a great beneficiary to the society? How do we ensure that, one, the element of wastage is actually trimmed down to certain levels as required by the World WFO, and of course, the entirety of the climate change kind of discussions. And also provisioning for this kind of facility is a rare kind of, I'd call it, utility. And for most of the families, especially those living in the innermost remote areas, all they needed is this facilitation, or they needed someone to actually latch on or pick their arm in terms of giving them smart water options that will be able to facilitate their kind of areas. We have nomadic communities also, and these are people who do not dwell in one place for quite some time. That is a meaning around it. And if you look at also their coexistence, the biggest hindrance to their kind of society is that at times we have very tough climatic conditions. For instance, when you have dry periods, and how do we address this issue of water instead of just also looking at, like, let's say, other partners or over relying on the government kind of assistance? Is we saw a notion as a bank to actually come in, help them or bring in partners and help them to bring out, those kind of facilitation around creating water provision, water storage, and water utilization with a bit of financing or commercializing, as well as usage. It's a bigger global agenda. I'd say it's something that was very innovative. So something we started last year, but to be able to see, like, let's say in the first quarter of this year, having an impetus in terms of more people talking about it, diverting it also to the, I'd say, economies around devolved government agenda, and of course also infusing with other people who've already gone into the water kind of economies in terms of how do we plug in as a national bank. I think that spreads it.
Interesting. I mean, I loved how, the government has also been involved in a lot of your work, and you're all about fintech partnerships. So, If you have to tell us about overall, because you look at partnerships overall, the best fintech partnerships in Kenya right now, like if you had to give us a short and a brief insight into maybe the top kinds of or categories of partnerships at this point in Kenya, what would they be?
I'd put it this way: those that participate in B2B kind of essentials. Here, I mean, I'd say business to business or bank to business kind of partnerships. I don't want to dive so much into their names and everything, but I can mention categories. There are those that have developed also in the insurance business, very hard to disrupt. We call it here insurtech. There are those that are actually powering health, the e-health kind of platforms. And of course, wealth management. Wealth management here meaning investing in bonds and securities. Those are the four categories that I actually look at as the biggest partnerships that I've seen around. The payment space has been quite, I'd call it, has been quite of washed down because there's so many. We have over 300 fintechs that are actually in the same space. Currently, I'm also seeing a lot of mobile lending kind of fintechs that have come into the market. Our regulator has been able to approve around 30 something, 39 of those out of around 380 applications. So it will tell you it's also a flooded market. And for that, you actually look at just anything beyond payments, anything beyond just facilitation of small loans or mobile loans. What else are we creating as a society? So, especially if you hint on the areas of insurtech, I mean, there's so much you can look at. There's so many products you can look at. If you look at wealth creation, I mean, there are bonds, there are government services that are being extended. How do you make it sure that they're very seamless and actually you can just do these kind of transactions from the comfort of your seat? So these are the things that I see being kind of, explosive to what we're already looking at. I'd say the next avenues is actually maybe this will come later, but looking at now, how does it build into a data kind of ecosystem? Because currently, when you're talking about open banking here, there's that confusion or there are blurred lines when it comes to addressing it as part of APIs. So meaning you have application, you have the API assets that are built within your banking kind of ecosystem. They address a third party kind of entity. Yet you want to look at it in the bit of this decentralized data needs to be touched by every other people because you can imagine your information from whatever sector you're in. If you go to the hospital that you go to normally, if you approach your insurance, maybe for your car or even from your medical, your banking services, they already have your name. They already have your identification documents. So meaning this is declustered in many ways. So how do you build an ecosystem that actually talks to each other, addressing one commonality to provision the best assets that maybe someone on the street needs? That is where we're headed. But in terms of your question, I'll be looking at anything beyond payments. So thank you,
Fantastic.
Chief.
Thanks so much for that. I mean, whether it's payments or insurtech, there's definitely, an integration that is happening between the government, between banks, and there's definitely a lot of
Yes,
fintech movement with so many fintech companies there. Now, I want
yes.
you to tell me because, fintech as a word has exploded in the last probably couple of years. So, across the world and in Kenya, what is the one fintech trend that is hot and buzzing at this point in time?
I think mobile lending. Why? Because we're talking about. I mean, if you look at things like Fuliza, the Mshwaris of this world, if you talk about these 29 or 39 so companies that have been approved by a central bank, they tell of an economy that actually has surged over time. The majority of the population actually is in the informal sector, and their kind of outlook is that they need this aspect of working capital that cannot be accessed maybe from structured banks. Here, I mean, like I'd say our indigenous or legacy banking kind of ecosystem. The brick and mortar aspect cannot address that. So maybe they're kind of also loans. What they're looking at is kind of minimalistic, maybe for a common lender, but if you're looking at the provisioning aspect, it has been spread to a basic tool, which is a mobile phone. So with a smartphone, you can be able to, get credit from a lot of these lenders. So I think that is one area that has really, I'd call it, exploded in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and we're also seeing many people investing in it. So meaning it's not completely saturated. It just depends on the kind of audience that is matching on what you want to do with it. We've not come out in terms of investments as much to tap into things like wealth creation and the rest, as per what I had mentioned initially. But I think it will be the next maybe frontier, talking from a middle class to an upper level kind of population, in terms of addressing maybe the money that maybe for some reason is it's not just beyond investing or capitalizing on your savings, just to look at it that way. But maybe to answer your question straight on forward, the lending bit is actually one area that has continued surging through and through in terms of the economies and utilization within the fintech space. Yeah.
Great. So mobile lending it is, and it is a trend that a lot of your counterparts in Kenya have also told me on their podcast. Love it.
Yeah.
In terms of technology that is being used in fintech today and in
Yeah.
financial inclusion overall in Kenya, I mean, you
Mm,
have decentralized finance, artificial intelligence, growth of digital
mm,
wallets, contactless payments. All these are things that are definitely coming forward. If you had to pick
yeah.
one technology in 2023 in Kenya that is booming, what would that be? Like technology in fintech and financial inclusion.
Maybe if I'm looking at on the bit of payments, I'd put it like, let's say, centralized finance, because I see a lot of dance into that. I see a lot of people actually looking at how do I hedge on bringing everybody maybe as a community, and maybe looking at it from a specific kind of area. Uh, the bit about anything beyond just data, and I'd put it this way: we've not come to a set where we are actually mature on the bit of consuming data, on projecting or doing anything just beyond payments. But it's something that I can't say we are grappling with it. It's a bit of a difficult discussion to have, and maybe people can argue around it. But the way I see it, I actually just look at centralized finance as, that is a no-brainer. Is something that a lot of people seem to understand, and a lot of people are approaching it. The issue about AI and the rest is something that will just build up way beyond when we are mature enough, when we agree to collaborate or to work together within industries. Then at least that will be a conversation that will pick. But for 2023, I think centralized finance is actually something that is sort of an area we're hedging on.
Thank you very much for that. So you're saying that, while technology is there, it takes a lot of time for the right sort of partnerships to form and, for you to actually grow into using it full-fledgedly. I get that. If you have to tell us about your skills, what is
Yeah,
your top skill that is required for anybody at your position
yeah,
to innovate at NBK or at a leading bank in Kenya? What is the top skill to
yeah.
possess for someone at senior levels?
Yeah, I'll call it like, let's say, first of all, you have to be a technical commercial leader. You have to understand technology, and you have to have the grit around commercialization of these areas. Two, you have to be a very strategic leader, because the way you're actually looking at things or formulating your opinions or decisions has to be built on strategy. Ideally, where is the world headed to, and how are you bringing out that kind of thing? The other rationale that you really need to work with is you need to be a team player. You really have to listen to all centers. You have to look at the strengths and the weaknesses of the teams and see how they can infuse each other. I mean, if you form to be a visionary leader, or you want to be someone that actually carries the team, then ideally you have to be a team player, and you have to observe anything that goes into that. And I think top of mind, if you look at anything beyond that, you have to be, and this does not cluster on the bit of just a role, is being a go-getter. Um, what I want to speak into is actually passion, because there are things that can be taught, and ideally we can go and learn the technical aspect of things. You can go and sit for a master's class and get the education bit around how business should be carried out. But again, the bit of experience that should be built in you is actually just getting to understand these things that are not taught in a classroom. Things like fintechs, things like partnerships, things like, let's say, what a traditional bank looks like, and ideally away from the brick and mortar, how do you bring other people and influence the people internally to actually believe that you should be able to work with these entities. I remember in earlier, I'd say, versions of the WFI S series. Part of the topics was how do banks and fintechs collaborate, and I think we're moving away from that because of people, thought leaders like me, who actually looked at it from a visionary kind of perspective. It needed to be painted, it needed to be created in a way that one, the people internally actually believe that there's an existent economy that you can work with. If I'm looking at, for instance, how Charles sits within this bank and how I can be able to influence the CXOs to actually see that, there's something that it can be able to do to borderline on our P&L, that we can be able to latch on and improve the brand visibility of the bank, that we can be able to give us strength in terms of customer confidence, because banking is all about trust. So those are the things or essentials that we need to look at. Up and beyond any skill set, all you need is that drive. All you need is that person with an open mind. And all you need is to be very confident, because it's a very scary avenue, I'll tell you, especially when you're dealing with people you don't know. Majority of these companies, I'll be honest to tell you, those that are dealing above a certain amount, like let's say over $1 million or so, majority of them are not owned locally. So meaning there is that risk of actually dealing with entities that are operating in this space without common originality. So you need to have those in mind. You need to be very courageous, and you need to be a risk taker above everything, because I mean, everything that you do commercially has to be an entity of risk. So if it's equally rewarding, then you have to make sure that you have everybody on board. Don't work alone, collaborate with other people, be a team player, be very visionary and strategic, and above everything else, be a firm believer that this is where we're headed to. And I think we can make it if we work with other people.
I love it. I love your go-getter attitude and that spirit to, just be passionate, be strategic, and take the whole thing forward, especially when the monies are like, say, upwards of $1 million. I like that,
Yeah.
you need to have the drive and the conviction to take it forward. But speaking of drive, conviction, big monies, Kenya is a Silicon Savannah, and you have so many young people who are under 30, possibly in that 18 to 30 age group, who are now going to be decision makers in the future. So with the
Yeah.
youth in Kenya, pretty much like
Yeah.
the youth in any country,
Yeah.
driving maybe financial inclusion forward, with them being mobile money users and being more used to tech, what is your one big way to make sure that the youth is involved, at a team level? Maybe they're working with you, and at a customer level because you're interacting with them. How do you crack
Yeah.
the Kenyan youth from a financial inclusion and fintech point of view?
Well, we thank part of the contribution I definitely get from you, and that would actually go unmentioned in a bigger way, because what Tradepass has been able to do is actually just open up avenues where we speak about what we do, our daily lives, and this, the center stage is every time I tell people what I do, they are like, okay, so what exactly is that? Because it's a very intentional role. If you have within banking new ventures and fintech development, apart from calling people accountants, tellers, credit officers, and the rest, it tells you there's actually an affirmed logic that this thing is there and actually should be part of it. That is one stage to it. The other is now what I've done in National Bank definitely is build two sectors of things. One, you met people who are already there. So for them, their thinking was this is just a business as usual kind of venture. I work in the morning, I come, I need to do ABCD, I execute on projects to do integrations and all, and I go home. You needed, first of all, to convert them into your kind of thinking, into innovators, into actually thought leaders in terms of what they want to do. Let them be influencers, first of all, across board. The other bit is for the young ones, as you're saying. So they come in as interns. Some of them just report on, just like they want to touch one or two things. They don't believe their areas is stretched beyond maybe what these other incumbents are. Well, first of all, is to create that role of ensuring that actually they pitch in all the kind of decision making roles that you have. You make sure that they are part of the discussions to do with any third party, any strategic move into creating things like APIs, buying into new technologies. For instance, currently we are doing our core banking, ensuring they are part of that project. Two, taking them into these incubation hubs. Currently, we have a lot of them within Nairobi, ensuring that they speak to their like-minded individuals. I mean, it's an age set that actually has already picked, especially on the developer space, on how things should be done in terms of developing the rails for other people to consume their kind of services, for them to provide applications that actually talk into banking and any other sector within the economy. So for us, the bit is to handhold them, first of all, in our places of work, ideally within the bank and within the fintech kind of space. And of course, to teach them avenues to work with incubators, because that is where some of these thought leadership, some of these innovative avenues have been built. I usually also take part in just mentorship kind of projects. I have, I think, a cohort of around 30 something, 37, individuals who, these are ladies and gents who are willing and they just want to follow the side of the career that I've seen. Originally, I was from the telecommunication companies. Yeah, I've worked with the internet service providers. I worked for Safaricom. So I came from a logic where, first of all, the curiosity around technology was built. Then I spread out into this area where I thought it was too disruptive, meaning the area of financial services. So for me, the light that I see is someone actually held my hand to take me to this far that I've come. Then I should be able to extend this kind of thought leadership to also a younger generation who can be able to pick the yardstick and, of course, progress the Kenyan agenda of growing into the financial age. That is the biggest thing that you can ever do in service to this country.
Fantastic. So, mentorship and taking the financial inclusion of the country, overall financial deepening of Kenya is what
Yeah.
you are working with. I love it that there's so much of energy and passion and mentorship that you bring to the table. Thank you so much for joining us on this very exclusive podcast. What's your final shout out to every young global individual listening to this podcast who is understanding what's happening in the fintech space? What do you think is going to happen to fintech in the world, fintech in Kenya, and how massive is the space for some young person who wants to be part of the fintech revolution wherever they are?
Okay, mine is I usually just have a non-complex kind of reasoning into anything, and my advice to all is that you need to just bring your A game to this kind of conversation. You need to be you, be yourself. You need to have this interactive way of looking at things. Be very visionary and open-minded in terms of what you're looking at, because I mean, it's not, if I'm looking at, like, let's say the space that Kenya and other countries are playing in, it's not a one shoe fit all kind of ecosystem. So meaning you have to be very open-minded. You decluster anything that you have, any inhibitions, any blinding sides that you already have, and anything that you're taught that borders in terms of blocking your sense into progression. Two is building passion. I think where I sit is actually a passion game. You can easily get distracted by a lot of things that either they form part of the path you'll go to. For instance, the regulation aspect, for instance, technology that is already existing, or even the legacy part of it. But if you look at just influencing people, I mean, investors have come through and have pumped a lot of money into the Kenyan ecosystem just because someone believed that ABCD can be done and it can be disruptive to the entire generation. The other bit is to keep watching what the world is doing. I think when it came to open banking and APIfication of services, we are replicating much of what is happening to, like, let's say, Europe. And also when you're looking at, like, let's say, remittance services, what is happening in Asia. Ideally, there are those startups, and even for the neobanks, what has been done even in the Americas and Europe. And you're looking at standard-wise, how can we be able to run fast? Then we create these policies or these avenues that will make sure that at least we live within a certain environment. So if you're coming in, do not wait for someone to actually come and tell you, stop, do this, do that. You should actually be the one who actually shows them. So ideally, this is how this thing works. And I think to make it work better, then we should be able to build in bridges. We should be able to build in, tapes around one or two things that for some reason will allow that cohesiveness and reduce the friction around, any security or I'd say any issues that might bring you down. So that is how I'd want to look at it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for giving us so much of an insight into what Kenya's financial innovation and fintech the scene is. The World Financial Innovation Series, 24th and 25th of May at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, powering East Africa's financial hub with the next wave of technologies with some fantastic guests like Mr. Charles, who joins us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. If there's one word you want to leave us with, I would say in your case, I think it's go getter. But if there's one word that you would leave us with, that's the motto of your life, what would that motto be? In just one word.
Yeah. Do I really have it? Just believe. That's the one word that has always led me to anything. Believe. That's it.
Fantastic. Well, I believe it's going to be a fabulous meeting of amazing minds. I look forward to seeing you, but you have so much to offer, not just for the NBK, National Bank of Kenya, but for Kenyans, the youth, and overall everybody in general. There's so much that you are doing in terms of a give back, in terms of mentorship to the youth, and there's so much that you are going to bring into the table. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much for joining us on this edition of the Tradepass podcast. Have a wonderful day and see you around.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for Tradepass. Thank you for the session. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you on the 24th and 25th of May. Asanteni sana. Thank you.